trustworthy, dependable, and honest. When you find a rare INFJ friendship, it's worth the work it takes to keep it. However, despite the incredible qualities they're able to bring to a connection, it's fair to say that still, an INFJ friend is not for the faint of heart. So, what makes remaining friends with an INFJ so challenging? Welcome or welcome back, psychos. Before we get into it, we'd love it if you liked and subscribed to our channel, as well as to click the post notification bell so you never miss a video. Alright, let's get right into it. Starting with number 1. INFJs have a hero complex that can attract heavily burdened connections. A hero complex, otherwise known as the savior complex or hero syndrome, is when someone constantly strives to be the hero of the situation. For the INFJ, this complex has much less to do with the recognition or egotism that is so often a factor in this type of scenario, and has much more to do with their empathetic perspective of the human mind. Known as the advocate or counselor type, the empathetic INFJ tends to attract those who need their help the most. Their empathy draws in those who could use an INFJ in their life, and ultimately, these are the types of connections INFJ feel most compelled to contribute to. This extroverted feeling personality type loves the idea of loving someone back to health, and when done successfully, there's an undeniable bond that remains between the INFJ and another. However, this successful dynamic is rarely the case. In fact, without the necessary experience, this hero complex attracts those who are struggling with things far beyond the INFJ's ability to fix. And this is where overly draining, short-lived friendships come into play. The friendships that leave the INFJ burnt out, confused, and reluctant to ever open their door again. Number 2. INFJs aren't the best at keeping in touch. When it comes to long-distance friendships, pen pals, or internet connections, the INFJ isn't exactly the best at the upkeep it requires. Ironically, a long-distance, no-pressure, reply when you can type of friendship is quite suitable for this introverted type. For obvious reasons, being able to build a friendship from a distance really helps the INFJ to not feel overwhelmed or obligated. However, without this pressure, INFJs slowly lose interest, or for a better word, priority, in upkeeping such a relaxed union. They have a habit of leaving others unread, thinking they replied only to realize months later that they forgot, or replying with close-ended answers that ultimately lead the conversation to fizzle out. These habits, combined with the fact that this introverted type is also very private and reserved, makes it difficult for them to share the important aspects of their life that are required to these types of periodic catch-up type connections. Number 3. INFJs will always remain skeptical. Call it trust issues or call it self-protection, the INFJ always remains slightly skeptical to those around them. Despite considering someone a close friend, this wary personality type won't ever put their complete trust in another individual. While this may be considered a toxic trait when it comes to close connections, they know too much about human behavior to be able to put their guards down entirely. We all know how hard it is for the INFJ to let people in, but there's a different challenge that comes with staying in the INFJ's life. And so, although it's not entirely impossible for this type to come up against people who don't mind or notice this side of the INFJ, for the most part, people don't stick around for long when they can still sense this guarded demeanor years down the line. Plus, although they rarely communicate it, INFJs can be quite judgy to those around them, which ultimately fuels their skepticism and causes them to overanalyze the behaviors of even their closest friends. Once again, if this is noticed by the other party, it can make them feel uneasy and uncomfortable. Number 4. The INFJ's expectations get in the way of things. Speaking of being slightly judgmental towards others, the INFJ type can't help but to bring their high expectations to the friendships they try to build and maintain. Aside from the bare minimum expectations of common sense, mutual respect, and shared empathy that they require in a connection, INFJs have a way of trying to get those they care for to become the best versions of themselves. They see the best in others and find it difficult to not hold them to these envisioned optimizations. While they try their best to hold their criticisms and suggestions to themselves, once a friend asks for advice, they may very well go on a little tangent rooted in blunt honesty and faults only the INFJ has observed. Of course, nobody wants to acknowledge their flaws, even more so when they're coming from a trusted source consisting of undeniable truths. Yet, for the INFJ, there's something about putting their emotions, free time, and private life on the line for the sake of a friendship that makes these expectations even more prominent. Number 5. The INFJ's introversion and need for alone time. One recurring struggle that every INFJ experiences in terms of connection building and friendship maintaining is the conflicting desire for solitude while also trying their best to avoid complete isolation. In fact, finding a balance between these two needs as an INFJ serves to be one of their most daunting concerns in life. Similar to their struggles that come with long-distance relationships, the INFJ's need for alone time becomes even more noticeable and significantly challenging when it comes to maintaining real-world friendships. Aside from the normal forgetting to return calls and unintentionally ignoring texts, some INFJs have the habit of making up excuses to avoid spending time with their close friends, or worse, cancelling plans at the last minute. Of course, one can only be turned down so many times. As this avoidance becomes noticeable to others, it slowly causes them to distance themselves more and more, eventually stopping inviting the INFJ out, or asking them for their time altogether. Luckily, although they may appear uninterested to friends seeking consistent communication and hangouts, those who understand them appreciate these quirks in exchange for the loyalty and empathy INFJs offer in return. Number 6. If there's not an intelligent connection, INFJs will stop contributing. Now, sometimes it can be difficult to tell if the INFJ is simply being their introverted selves, requiring time to rest and recharge, or if they are in fact uninterested. To make things even more confusing, it takes this analytical type some time to come to the conclusion of whether or not the connection is worth their time and energy. To be more specific, INFJs require a mentally stimulating connection in order to eventually consider someone a true friend. Yes, like we mentioned, trust, honesty, and all the other qualities of a friend must be there. But a specific characteristic INFJs always seek out in another is their ability to challenge the INFJ's thinking. They don't want a friend who is overly agreeable, overly compliant, or overall afraid to speak their mind. This intellectual type requires mutual intellect with differing opinions in order to encourage both friends to expand their perspectives of the world. Although they're able to get along with just about anyone, there's something about a deep conversation that bonds the INFJ to another and leaves them genuinely wanting more of their time. Rather than filling the silence with another with gossip and small talk, they need to be able to get into the nitty-gritty of life's mysteries, and that's hard to come by. And lastly, number 7. The INFJ's conflict avoidance can lead to unnecessary challenges. Another challenge that often gets in the way of the INFJ's friendship, as well as their romantic partnerships, is their unfortunate personal struggle of conflict avoidance, with the idea that stirring the pot by speaking their mind will only bring about hurt feelings and unresolved issues. This type tries their best to avoid creating friction in a connection, no matter how crucial their expressions may be. They have a habit of letting things fester in the hopes that they eventually disappear, when in reality, the smallest of issues end up snowballing into something that leads them to want to throw in the towel altogether. They themselves know from experience that this isn't the best approach, and yet, they tend to find themselves in similar positions time and time again. Whether it be a behavioral habit their friend exhibits, the overstepping of the INFJ's non-communicated boundaries, or a significant disagreement on a specific topic that causes the INFJ to think of their friend differently, instead of talking it out, the INFJ becomes distant, allowing that wedge to grow larger and larger. Well, psychos, that's it for today. So, if you're an INFJ personality type, do you think it's challenging for others to keep a friendship with you? Let us know in the comments below. Also, make sure to leave us a like, share with your friends, and subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video.